Hello everybody and welcome back to Rev Left Radio. On today's episode we have back on the show for the second time Black Redguard aka BRG. He's back on for round 2 of Rev Left, and the first time we talked about Maoism and black nationalism was a really great conversation, and this time we're all over the map. I'm asking him questions about Palestine, about a workers' party, about the Marxist left's short and medium term goals, where he sees human civilization in 100 to 500 years, the Maoist position on China and Taiwan, his experience within the DSA, etc. And as always with BRG, there's no punches pulled. He agitates and ruffle feathers. He doesn't mind calling people out who he disagrees with, and that's fine. You might not agree with every single thing that he says, but I appreciate him coming on and sharing his opinions. And in general, I think he's a really engaging and principled comrade who has, for many, many years, been putting in the work both organizationally and doing political education. And I always find, him to be a refreshing voice on the left, even if sometimes that involves grabbing the left by the collars and slapping them around a little bit. Sometimes we need that, and he is more than willing to do just that. So this is a really fun, wide-ranging conversation. Buckle up.
What's up, everybody? It's BRG. I'm glad to be back here with an old comrade, Brett, and looking forward to a good discussion.
Absolutely, man. Welcome back to the show. I think this is round 2, your second appearance. It's been too long in between. I'll have to fix that going forward, but it's always a pleasure and an honor to have you on, and I know our audience really enjoyed your episode last time, and so I'm hoping to give them more of that. Now this time, like last time we had a conversation, it was more about black nationalism and Maoism. I think this time I wanted to just kind of spread things out and, talk about a bunch of different topics. So every question is just going to be sort of, different things that are relevant to the revolutionary Marxist left at this moment, and kind of get your, feedback and opinion on these things, because you're a voice that, I think is very principled and consistent. And I really appreciate, your politics in general. So I think this will be a good conversation. And I think the first place to start is of course what's going on right now with the ongoing genocide in Palestine. I know this is sort of a broad question, but I think it's a good first one. Can you just kind of tell us your thoughts on the overall situation and kind of where you see things going from here?
Yeah, like you said, it's a genocide. I mean, I think both of us are actually far to the left of people like AOC on this position, who unfortunately has refused to even use the term genocide. And the organization that I've been a member of since last summer, DSA, most of us acknowledge and fight against the fact that we are watching a literal genocide, mass murder, or forced expulsion of millions of people from their ancestral home, from their national territory. And the fact that one of our major and most well-known elected officials, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, refuses to use this term even, and continues to pander to the Biden administration while also fainting at the left, shows that within the organization there is a burning need to hold electeds accountable and not just allow them to use our resources to get themselves elected and then sell us out. But like you said, like everybody with eyes to see and ears to hear knows, this is a genocide. And I've talked to a lot of comrades who feel like, oh, what can we do? What can we do? And Palestinian comrades, they consistently say that we need to keep talking about this. We need to use our positions of privilege at the imperial core, at the West, to highlight what's going on. We have to talk to our friends. We have to talk to our coworkers. We have to talk to our union brothers and sisters, and say, this cannot keep happening. And the sacrifice made by Comrade Aaron Bushnell should be remembered. in Yemen, his picture was literally raised at a million-person march. All of the major Palestinian resistance factions have honored him as a martyr, and that's something that we need to keep in mind. Like all this discourse politics, like it disgusts and sickens and grievously upsets me that right after this comrade's death, people were talking about like who has the right to use resting power. Like we have to get serious. Like we have to get serious about our politics. And if we are true friends, comrades, and allies of Palestine, we have to realize that playtime is over. All this bullshit discourse that flows out of the ivory tower and may or may not be directly stirred up by alphabet agencies. Like this shit needs to cease movement. Like there's people fucking dying. We have seen images and photographs and videos. Like we have a literal genocide being live streamed and beamed into our phones every fucking day. Every fucking day we wake up to a new horror, a new barbarity, a new atrocity. And playtime is over. Playtime is for peacetime, and we are not at peacetime, and we have not been at peacetime ever as a class. As a black man in America, we've been catching hell for 500 years. There's never, ever been a point in the history of this hemisphere where black people have been able to sit on our laurels and say, well done. Like everything that we have had to fight for. We have had to struggle for. So that's something that I would encourage comrades to remember and keep in mind. If we are true comrades and friends and allies of Palestine, like we have to share their pain. We can't just share a post every day and be like, okay, I've done my Palestine thing for today. Like that's intolerable. We're witnessing a literal Holocaust in front of our eyes, and we got to get our shit together.
Absolutely. And there is, I mean, especially when you go online, there seems to be a sort of deep immaturity and a deep unseriousness amongst many people on the quote unquote left, whatever that means to whatever faction of it. That is a problem. And the weaponizing of liberal identity reductionism is a thing that we've seen, occur many times over the last decade and a half or so. But it really, I feel like its time might be coming to an end because there's just a level of just obvious sort of immaturity, reductionism, and sort of almost cringe at this point when that identity politics and that reductionist, where everything is reduced to mere identity and then is weaponized against somebody who, in this instance, it's not a particularly important sort of discourse around rest and power, but it speaks to that broader trend, and it's literally in the face of somebody who burned their life away to highlight the humanity of Palestinians. And I just think that that's just like a rot at the core of the American left and a product of our overall ineffectiveness, that we can navel gaze to such an extent, we can language police to such an extent while the world is literally on fire, people are dying, and that sort of takes the place of real organizational work, sadly. And I think these corporate social media outlets are really geared towards sort of sucking you in and keeping you on there indefinitely, and a lot of people, especially younger folks, kind of see that as their main terrain of activism, and I think that's a real problem.
Yeah, I mean, social media is a tool, just like anything else, just like a newspaper, just like a television program if used correctly. Like when I was, I guess you could say, on the Maoist fringe of the fringe, like we tended to. Well, I'm talking about the Red Guards here. I was never a member of the Red Guard / CRCP USA or whatever funky acronym they had for themselves. But like, it was just like, okay, we seek a mass movement. We seek to unite the people under the banner of Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, principally whatever the fuck. And then like you issue media coverage, or you seek it out by these spectacular actions. Like who the fuck has been convinced not to vote by some declassed college kid spray painting don't revolt on the National World War I memorial or some stupid shit like that. Like when you're first coming to politics, and like there's a reason why the Gonzaloites had a stranglehold on the Maoist movement in the United States for such a long time, because organizations like PSL, CPUSA, like for a long time, they haven't really done anything. People get tired of marching in circles. People get tired of losing presidential campaigns. Like a smart person, and intelligent and genuine political actor, or someone who aspires to be a political actor, knows that power is, as Huey P. Newton defined it, the ability to define a phenomenon and make it act in the according manner, in the desired manner, rather. Basically, okay, we know we have enemies, landlords, the government, the bourgeoisie, all of these people that make our lives a living hell and make the lives of our brothers and sisters and comrades overseas a living hell. So we have to exercise our will as a class over these people. And marching through the streets of New York or Philly or Washington, D.C. Every week, that doesn't do anything. Like, these people look up, the cops are happy because they're getting overtime and they get the opportunity to kick a little ass. And like, nobody gives a fuck. So naturally, these kids who are coming out to protest for the first time, who are getting off social media because, again, it's a tool, but if you do nothing but lay on it and lay on it and lay on it, you're going to end up being permanently depressed. You're going to be fucked up, because some of the discourse, some of the shit that's talked about there, it's frankly disconcerting and unsettling. Mm-hmm. Like, I've seen the stupidest fucking shit talked about. Like, there's no other explanation besides these people are fucking cops. So you have these kids who are coming off social media, who are going out to protest, see that this stuff isn't working. Nobody's taking them seriously. So, yeah, in 2019 and 2020, those kids will go out and become Gonzaloites and be led into doing stupid shit and end up in these cults where they were being abused by bad actors. So it's essential that those of us who are serious, those of us who are normies, so to speak, normal people, although if you ask my coworkers or my family or my friends or my comrades in town, I probably would not be a normal person, but relatively normal people, it's our job to build a left that keeps people away from doing stupid shit like joining ultra-left cults like Black Hammer and the Red Guards. Well, I wouldn't even call Black Hammer ultra-left. I wouldn't even say that they're a political organization. But anyways, it's our job to keep them away from those types of people. The stupidity of the ultra-left is the responsibility, and it can be laid at the feet of the communist movement, which has failed to get its shit together. And the ultra-right, people like the leadership of PSL and all of these other do-nothing organizations, it's their fault, because people are only going to do that shit for so long before they're like, you know what, fuck this. How many Palestinian people have been killed while we're marching through the streets and getting arrested on purpose? It's simply ridiculous.
Yeah, and threading that needle between sort of ineffective marching and ultra-left adventurism is something I think we're going to get into a little bit more with some questions down the line. As for the PSL and the organizational front, no organization is above critique, and certainly there are valid critiques of the PSL. I do have to say, personally, I'm not involved with the PSL, but I do know and have talked to and have formed close friendships with comrades who are in the rank and file of the organization, and many of them are obviously incredibly sincere committed, folks, criticisms of the organization and the leadership aside. But that's a perfect segue into this next question, because as you just mentioned, you somewhat recently have joined the DSA. And, of course, on the left, there are criticisms of every org, including the DSA. But I'm really interested to hear, especially in light of the criticisms of some other left organizations in North America, if you can kind of explain your reasoning for joining and what value you see in the DSA, even as someone whose politics are, well to the left of that organization's center, probably.
Yeah. I'm definitely left of center. As a matter of fact, I would even consider myself left of the left in DSA. There's not that many Maoists. Well, I know of quite a few Maoists that either joined after I did or they were already there. And yeah, I myself, I'm a Maoist. Marxism is the ruthless criticism of everything that exists, right? Mm-hmm. And DSA, last I checked, exists. Although if you listen to some of the right wing talking about this budget thing, that apparently laying off 12 staff members will result in the collapse of the organization as we know it. But I'm not really a fan of the sky is falling shit, especially from rightists. But why did I join DSA? Why would a dyed-in-the-wool Maoist and revolutionary black nationalist join an organization that, it definitely has a race issue. A lot of white folks, a lot of petty bourgeois white folks. But all that aside, look, if you're a leftist in America, you're really not escaping white people as much as we would love that to be the thing. But it's necessary to work in coalition with white people. That doesn't mean that you can't criticize them, certainly. And I've spent a lot of time doing that. But why would I join DSA? Well, for one, it's the largest socialist-oriented organization in the United States. PSL, all these little Maoist study groups or whatever the hell Maoists are up to these days on the fringe. They don't even come close. So that's one draw. And then two, there's actually space for struggle. In a small Maoist or Marxist-Leninist, anti-revisionist organization, say 12 or 15 members in one city, and that's an infinitesimally small organization. But that DC model applied to that small of an organization, it lends itself to some pretty funky shit. So in these organizations, yes, there is ideological unity, but in most of them, there's really no space for struggle at all, because if you struggle too much, you're going to end up getting yourself expelled. Mm-hmm. So DSA actually has space for struggle. It has space for sharp line struggle. You've got DSA forums, which I definitely need to be using a lot more. But struggle gets sharp sometimes. But I really like the way that I've seen comrades treat each other within the organization in terms of disagreeing, but realizing that at the end of the day, we're all in this thing together. Mm-hmm. And then I was really impressed by the election of a left-wing NPC, a left-wing governing body. I would probably say was the most attractive thing that pulled me to the organization, because within the Maoist movement, DSA was a joke. It was just a bunch of people that went out to get social democrats elected. But here we have in Red Star, in Marxist Unity Group, and a variety of other caucuses and people who are represented on the NPC, we have a left-wing majority for the very first time in living memory. So it seems like we're beginning to thoroughly expunge the spirit of that fuck Michael Harrington from the organization, and I wanted to be a part of it. Yeah, I think I got in at like just the right time because like it's a space for struggle. Like there's no reason, no ideological, no political reason why Maoists should stand aloof from the largest socialist organization in the United States. Like, I don't think Mao would be very impressed or very happy about that. Mm-hmm. Like, he's like, what, why are you all starting all these little bitty study groups and trying to do your own thing when these people are right over here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, I find that, convincing and interesting. Yeah, it is the number one, just size-wise, the biggest organization. There is this room via the caucuses and via these different factions within the organization for these line struggles to be carried out, meaning that unlike some of these smaller, hyper-ideological, sectarian groupings, there is this possibility that the organization itself can be moved in proper directions through these line struggles and through these different caucuses, battling it out with each other ideologically, forming alliances, etc. So yeah, I think that is a sort of a convincing narrative that you laid out there. How does line struggle necessarily take place within the DSA? Like, what are the nuts and bolts of that? Is it you get access to certain forums that are just of DSA members and people can have this out? Is it more structured than that? Is it sort of decentralized? People just have these arguments within the organization? Or is it really through the caucuses that this line struggle takes place?
The caucuses are a major factor. Like each caucus has a website, and they put out their line on the website, like their line on a position that's affecting the organization. So Socialist Majority Caucus, they have a website, and if you want to find out what Socialist Majority Caucus thinks on a certain issue, then you can go to their website and you can pull up their position paper. Same with Bread and Roses, Reform and Revolution, Marxist Unity Group, and Red Star, who I've already mentioned, Libertarian Socialist Caucus, Commie Caucus, which I love, and so any issue that's important, like you can go to a caucus's website and read it. And of course, each caucus also has like a handful of people with big Twitter accounts who will definitely make their opinion and that of their caucus known. I'm not in the caucus, but I know people who are in almost every caucus that it's in DSA. They're all good comrades. None of them want to run the organ to the ground. Accusations of entryism and wreckerism fly amongst some of the more unprincipled members of the organization. But like the rank and file, like a lot of times we're having shit out on Twitter, or some of the smarter people are on the forums. I haven't even posted on the forums yet, but yep. So there's many methods to struggle within DSA. The main thing with Twitter, though, is that with the clout and name recognition that DSA has, when they see us fighting amongst each other, sometimes viciously, you got liberals like dyed-in-the-wool Democratic Party operatives and even outright fascists who are like, hey, look, the commies are fighting again. So that's just something that we have to be mindful of. But again, it's the year 2024. Social media, it's popular because it's convenient, because it's fast, because it's cathartic. And that's why people use it so much. That's why people do things that they maybe shouldn't be doing. They wouldn't be allowed to do if they were in a strict democratic centralist organization. Like, if you're in one of these Maoist groups, these small Maoist groups, like some of them even have social media discipline. Like they will, if you make a stupid tweet, or you say something stupid on your YouTube channel, like they'll literally jump down your throat about that. Like, if I recall correctly, at one point, the Red Guards actually wanted me to get rid of my YouTube channel because they call it individualism. But I'm like, look, there's a point where like there's a fine line between, okay, yes, this is necessary for the good of the organization and for the good of the movement, and then like at the same time, like you cannot tell other grown adults what to do. You cannot. Like that's not going to work. People already surrender enough of their time and autonomy to their boss. Why the fuck would they come and in their free time allow a 27-year-old art history grad student to tell them that they can't have a fucking Facebook account? It's ludicrous. It's not going to happen. You're going to end up, what's going to happen is you're going to end up with a bunch of mentally ill people who are easily influenced, who are easily manipulated, and that's going to be your organization. That was the case at the Red Guards. They recruited a bunch of college students. I don't think they organically recruited a single proletarian, like a single proletarian who joined them because of their work. It could not be found. They could not be found. So all they had was a bunch of UTA kids that they dogged out, that they manipulated, that they abused horribly, financially, and in many cases even physically. And no, because no adult, no thinking, sensible adult, 40 years of age, 35 years of age, who have been around the block a few times, would join an organization like this. They take one look at these people and be like, these people are crazy.
Yeah, and I think in Black Hammer there's a similar dynamic of incredibly young, manipulatable people that were brought on board in a very similar and obviously cult-like way as well. Oh,
Black Hammer at the end was literally recruiting mentally ill, unhoused people. Yeah, they were literally going to the park, and they had this house that I guess they bought with the money that they had swindled during that whole Hammer City deal. Ghazi basically took all the money and ran to Atlanta, where he rented this house, and he would literally take these homeless kids and off the street. He was doing something called a revolutionary church in one of the parks down there, and he was basically getting these black kids, these unhoused kids, and bringing them to this house, and cult indoctrination 101. And unfortunately, it ended in tragedy when this individual who literally thought that he was going to end up like Fred Hampton, like he thought that this was his Fred Hampton moment. The cops were coming to kill them because of their non-existent revolutionary activity, and the kid blew his brains out. And I worked with Ghazi at one time on it was basically a black nationalist blog. Yeah, the name escapes me, but it was Ghazi, me, a couple of All African People's Revolutionary Party folks, and like even then, it was obvious that some of like he dominated discussion. He didn't know what the fuck he was talking about. And the thing that led me to being like, hey, yeah, Ghazi as a fuck was when they, for no reason whatsoever, decided they wanted to attack Anne Frank, a 14-year-old girl who died of typhoid. And they were burning her books. And I'm like, why? Like, why can't you people be fucking normal? Mm-hmm. Like, people don't understand, like, how much clout that black people have in the revolutionary movement worldwide. Like, people in Palestine, people in Africa, people in Australia, people in China who are struggling, people all over the world, like, they look up to us. They see us as the real revolutionaries in the belly of the beast. They take us more seriously than they do our white comrades. So we have to live up to that. Like, we have to earn that respect, and we have to earn the right to walk in the footsteps of George Jackson, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Malcolm X and Huey P. Newton. They paved the way for us. And for us to squander this revolutionary legacy that has been bequeathed to us for nothing or for temporary gratification, that's a crime, a sin, most foul. So yeah, fuck Ghazi.
Is he's in jail now? Do you know where he is?
Yeah, he's still in jail.
Okay.
I don't know what jail he's in. Like, this guy isn't my ex-boyfriend or anything, but yeah, last I checked, he's still in jail.
Well, let's zoom out a little bit and kind of think about Marxism writ large. I know you've alluded to this, but what should the Marxist left's sort of short to medium term goals be here in the United States, given where we currently are? Like, what would you like to see as a real evolutionary step in the Marxist left on this continent?
Well, for one, we have to touch grass. Like, we have to be fucking normal. Like, every time I get on Twitter, it's a discourse about Stalin's mustache or Mao Zedong's grocery list. Like, these people are fucking dead. Yeah. They're dead. They're not going to rise from the tomb. They're not going to come help us. Okay? And they left us a legacy of works. They left us examples of glorious struggle. But Che Guevara, I mean, they cut the man's hands off. Che, he's not going to rise from his tomb in Cuba. If he did, he'd be handless. I don't think he'd be much good with a gun anymore. But like, we have to be normal, and we always want to emulate dead leaders of the past, who again left us very good revolutionary theory, which should be read. But we have to realize that we are in the year 2024. Like, we have gone through things. We have at our fingertips technology and processes that Che, that Mao, that Lenin, that Marx, that Engels, that all these people could not even dream of. Like, what the fuck would Lenin do with the cell phone? Like, if he were to break out of his tomb in Moscow and somebody handed him an iPhone, like, he would probably spend days and days turning into weeks just looking up cat videos. Because this is like, it would be like handing a cell phone to a caveman.
Yeah.
So we have to realize that we live in entirely different times from the periods in which our foundational texts were written. And that's one thing that always burned my ass as a hardcore Maoist fringe guy. Like, everybody was like, refer to the foundational texts. Refer to the foundational texts. Okay, we refer to the foundational texts, but imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, didn't say anything about the fucking internet. Should we still read Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism? Yes, we should. But we also have to engage in the processes which enabled Lenin and Mao and all of the other great heads, trademark, to make these insightful analyses. They went out amongst the people. They were involved in class struggle, and that's what enabled them to write these things that echo down to us through the decades. And if we're going to have that same legacy, if we are going to see a revolution in our lifetime or in our children's lifetimes, we have to get serious about this. Later, for arguing over shit that was settled 70 and 80 years ago. Like, we're still talking about Stalin versus Trotsky. Stalin won that argument with an ice pick. Get over it.
Yeah.
Would I personally, if I were in Stalin's shoes, would I have had Trotsky summarily and extrajudicially executed? No, because he did exactly what Trotsky wanted him to. He made him a martyr. Now you've still got 20-year-old college kids talking about him 80 years after the fact. So, no, if I were Stalin, I would have said Trotsky, like, sent out to the Urals or Siberia to teach kids how to make wicker baskets or something. For one, that would have curbed his ego, and two, like, the man had some gifts. The man had some talents. He was a very good orator. He spoke several languages, and he was a very good author. So yeah, put him there, give him an NKVD minder, and forget about him. Like, that's how you get rid of your rivals. Like, that's what Mao did during the great proletarian cultural revolution. And of course, many of those people ended up coming back, but it was a lot better than just having people taken out and shot or ice picked in the head. But that little historical tangent aside, yeah, we just have to get serious. We have to be normal. And we have to be able to use the internet, the power of the internet, to bring people to our ideology. We have to make our ideology understandable to people. We can't just quote books at people. We can't, like, I saw this Trot kid he was in Kensington, a bougie part of London, and he's with that new Revolutionary Communist Party that the IMT has founded. And he was just standing on this barricade, giving a speech to nobody in particular. And like, he called it a barnstormer. And I felt so bad for this kid. Like, I really did. My tears almost came to my eyes. Like, this guy, nobody was listening to anything that he had to say. Like, London especially has a very strong tradition of public speaking, like Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park. Like, they probably thought this guy was some religious nut. Great Britain in particular has been overrun with Trotskyists for decades.
Yeah.
As soon as the ice pick left the man's brain, out of his very large brain poured 15 different organizations, which turned into 50 different organizations. Is like the Dothraki story about It's like the story that one of Daenerys Targaryen's handmaidens tells her about the moon going too close to the sun and letting dragons out because the moon is cracked by the sun. Yeah. That's what happened when Stalin cracked Trotsky's brain, outpoured 1,000 formations. So Britain knows what trots sound like. So like, and this kid. And like, I know what was going on in this kid's head. He probably thought he probably thought that he was the next Lenin. As a matter of fact, they probably told this kid that he was going to be the next Lenin. So they got this kid to go out with this funky looking getup on, with the flag in one hand and a newspaper in the other hand. He was just standing up there. Well, we're in a general strike. Oh, that's right. And I'm like, bruh, like, why? Well, like, what? Why? People are more distracted by fucking puppy and cat videos on their phones, or fucking Sexy Red. I don't know if Sexy Red is popular in Britain. She probably is. But like, they're listening to that stuff. They got AirPods on. Nobody's listening to you. You're part of the background noise. But this kid actually thought that he was doing something. That's the thing that gets me. We're so unserious that we have these people that are not being offered political education. They're being offered brainwashing. They're not being taught how to organize. They're not being taught to read anything outside of the tradition of whatever cult that they've stumbled across. Like, there are people in this RevCom or whatever thing that don't even know that they're Trotskyists. And that is atrocious. Like, here we are. We have our Palestinian comrades overseas fighting a life or death struggle this Ramadan. And over here we have people standing on barricades in bougie parts of London playing with, so many toy revolutionaries. And the key thing for the Marxist movement in the United States and in the imperial cores in general is to, like, stop being fucking toy Bolsheviks, toy Chinese communists. If we're not aping these people and failing, then we're cheerleading for China and Russia and all of these other places, which, yes, the U.S. is fucking with them, but Germany and Britain fucked with each other during World War I. So if it's not campism, it's LARPing and all sorts of other idiocy. That's why people don't take us seriously. That's why normal, average, everyday working people do not take the left in this country seriously, because, like, what gains has it provided? How has it made their lives better? How is it a force in their lives? Like this whole DSA staff debate. The Black Panther Party didn't have any fucking paid staff. They didn't. They had thousands of bright-eyed young people who were tired of the shit that their people were going through, who are motivated by not money but love for the people. Like, Fred Hampton didn't get no fucking salary from the Black Panther Party, and he was one of the best communists that this country has ever had. Mm-hmm. So we have to reorient ourselves. we have to proletarianize ourselves. No, I'm not saying drop out of fucking Yale and go work at McDonald's. If you do, I will come to your McDonald's and laugh at you. What I'm saying is we have to paint our organizations the colors of the working class, the colors of the proletariat. Right now, the left in the United States and in the imperial core in general is painted the colors of the petty bourgeoisie. Mm-hmm. That's why 12 white hipsters in New York have been allowed to gobble up 70% of DSA's fucking budget.
Well, yeah, so a couple points there. One, you're absolutely obviously correct, and I agree with you about this fetishizing of the past as sort of a product of our collective impotence. And I was just reading the 18th Brumaire by Marx, so we have an episode coming out on it soon. And he talks about this in times of revolutionary crisis. There's this tendency to put on the costumes of the past, right? To fetishize this Stalin versus Trotsky debate, or to wear the garb of a Lenin, or, to sort of fetishize these past figures and these past revolutions instead of trying to grasp the historical moment that you're actually in and build out from there going forward. So I think that is, obviously very much in line with what Marx was saying 150 years ago. But there's also this other thing that I do think on some level there has been some progress made on something you said early on in that answer, which is there seems to be some effectiveness in our ability to convince more and more people over the last several years of a more revolutionary politic. I think mostly because of the material conditions that, our generation and the next generation coming up, Gen Z, sort of have lived through and are sort of, shaped by. Hyper alienation, this complete bullshit jobs for low wages, being completely compressed under mountains of debt, and then you see these global crises like the Palestinian resistance, and even locally, a lot of people were educated, for all of its flaws from the Black Lives Matter movement and the militancy that was engendered within that movement, especially during the summer of 2020. And so I do think that people are coming around, but that's sort of the problem, is if you can convince a bunch of people. We have a bunch of like political education outlets, or, lots of meme outlets on social media, lots of young people coming in, but then there seems to be, very little above and beyond that. So if you're convinced of these politics, that's one thing, but then it's like, okay, what do I do next? Do I join in a little organization? And yeah, maybe this organization in this relatively small city is only 15 people. Should I do that? Should I not do that? There's a generalized impotence. And so I think, bridging that gap, we're bringing more people in, but then we have to be able to funnel them into the proper directions,
Yeah. And like, that's the thing, like a lot of the apparatchiks and many of these left-wing organizations, like they see people as numbers. They don't see people as things to be developed. They just see people as objects. They see them as bodies at protests. They see them as signs in hand. Like, we treat our people like shit. But like you said, and like history has shown us, like as long as material conditions for people are fucked up, as long as people with college degrees, mind you, have to work at Texas Roadhouse or Starbucks, there's going to be struggle. And our job is to take that struggle and ensure that it doesn't dissipate. Like what happened during the Black Lives Matter uprisings. Black Lives Matter uprisings. Look at me sounding like Trump. During the Black Liberation Movement uprisings of both 2014 and 2020 cannot be allowed to happen again. They were co-opted. They were allowed to be co-opted. Yeah. And the nonprofit industrial complex, all of these NGOs, the Urban League, like, do you know that the site of the Quick Trip that was burned down in 2014, it's now like this big Urban League center, and the Salvation Army is there too. So you can come and get brainwashed into the ideology of the black bourgeoisie, and you can get an old stinky army blanket too. And yeah, it's literally like right in front of the complex where he was killed. And we have to, like, we communists, we revolutionaries have to assert ourselves, because there are people that are being paid like very large amounts of money to ensure that we do not get hegemony, we do not get dominance. So, Yeah, that's one major thing, like educating people and being out there with the people so that they don't just see us as faceless masks or like people that come and yell and then go home. They see us as comrades, to see us not just as comrades, but as the best comrades. We have to be like front and center in the struggle, not in an opportunistic way. Like it always sickens me how PSL gets their ugly yellow and black signs. They always have to, like, every time something happens, emergency protest, emergency parade, whoop-de-fucking-do, come pick up a sign. And yes, I have comrades in PSL like you do, rank and file comrades. I think most of the national leadership has blocked me. But, like, it's just opportunistic. Like, what exactly is this going to solve? That always made me sick. Like even during Ferguson and during the Stockley localized struggle in 2017, like there was this one group. It's called Expect Us, and they basically monopolized the protests. And like if they didn't like you, they wouldn't let you speak. They would literally set up actions alongside actions that my organization FTP and other militant revolutionary organizations did at the same time. They would set up actions to basically steal all the people. Of course, we stole one of their marches. So, but like this whole like it's jousting. Like, why can't we all get in a room together? And I'm not saying put our political differences aside, but like realize that hey, black kid just got shot. His body is still in the middle of the fucking street. So it really doesn't matter if you're an anarchist or you're a trad or you're a left of center liberal. Like, let's raise hell for this kid. But people's egos, people's petty bourgeois mindset, people's I gotta one up these people mindset, like no, and especially in the black community where like get a bag is like the motto of a lot of my generation and a lot of the Zoomers. It's so easy. It's so easy for somebody that gets clout because they appeared in a really good picture or something. It's easy for them to sell out. Like, I'm going to make these white folks pay me. That's what a lot of people thinking. But when the white folks pay you, they're not just giving you money out of the goodness of their heart because that's not what they do. So it's important like that we educate our younger comrades and we struggle with comrades our age and older. Like a lot of us are afraid to confront elders. We can't be. And it's important that like we struggle against this. I'm going to get mine by any means necessary mindset. Like anything that we have has come at the point of a machete or the point of a gun. Like we have to quit seeking easy ways out. We don't want to be funded by the Rockefeller or the Ford Foundation because the Rockefeller and the Ford Foundation are going to choke the life out of your movement and turn you into an enemy of your people. Like there was this guy, DeRay McKesson in St. Louis. He can't even come to St. Louis no more. People like will literally throw shit at him because of the shit that he did during Ferguson.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
I haven't heard about him in a while. I hope he's dead.
just a raw opportunist, right?
Yeah, just a raw opportunist. And I hated that ugly fucking Patagonia blueberry puffer vest he wore.
Well, yeah, I definitely agree that in our society we're deeply conditioned into this hyper-individualism, into this sort of, worship of the self, this deification of one's own ego, the get mine at all costs sort of mentality, and that's a real problem. And of course, everything in society is sort of structured to bring that part out of you, from social media to these sort of opportunists at these various protests. And, personally, and one of the things I've tried to do on Rev Left for a long time, and people have different opinions on this, is this idea that we should do some sort of work individually to try to dismantle that ideological apparatus within ourselves and the ego that sort of it all revolves around. And I think there's some long held traditions like within Buddhism that are meant to systematically confront and dismantle that ego that leads to so much of this sort of hyper individualism and this me narcissism that, has infiltrated not only the left, but the entire American society, entire imperialist core capitalist societies. And I think it behooves us to try to do some of that work in tangent with and in sort of combination with outward political struggle. But one thing I wanted to move on to is this idea of possibly a workers' party. So do you see any value to the pursuit of building an electoral party, some version of a real workers' party, to contest on the terrain of electoralism against both the Democrats and the Republicans? Or do you think our time and energy is better spent more or less completely outside of the electoral terrain?
If you were talking to me 5 years ago, I would have said that I would have echoed the stock Maoist line at the time: "Don't vote, revolt." And I mean, that's my own personal opinion on voting. Like, I'm not voting in any of this crap.
Agreed.
I'm not. But millions of people do, and you also have black people that are being disenfranchised. So it's kind of goofy to say, like, don't vote, revolt, and there are literal people in Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi and Louisiana and Texas who literally are being, like, having their right to vote taken away. Like, people died to get our right to vote in this country. And like DC is a literal colony. Puerto Rico is a literal colony. Hawaii is a literal colony. But like DC, especially because, like, that's the nation's capital, and it's called Chocolate City for a reason. The percentage of black people in the population is decreasing. DC is becoming heavily gentrified, but like DC does not have any representation at the national level.
Yeah.
Yet it's still governed in major part by Congress. So you've got a whole bunch of black people that are crowded into this city. Like, there used to be slums right up the street from the White House. And it's this: if DC was full of white people, it would be a state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, if DC becomes a state, it's probably going to be in large part because the white people that are moving there, the moneyed white people, are going to demand representation.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. So there's a lot of talk about whether or not communists should engage in elections. Should we do stupid shit like Cornel West is doing? No. Like, he's literally made an ass out of himself this whole process.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Same thing. Claudia and Karina, like, they're not going to, like, no. Fucking Kanye West, I think, is going to get more votes than them. I think he actually did in Tennessee last cycle.
Oh.
So there is a basis. There is a foundation for communist involvement in the electoral process. That cannot be the majority of our work. That cannot be the sum total of our work. But as long as the American people see the electoral process as being legitimate, like, a revolution cannot happen if there's a safety valve. If there's a mechanism that people can turn to, like, nobody's going to pick up a gun and go fight somebody and get themselves killed. Okay? Like, people with full refrigerators do not do that. People with food stamps do not do that. People with cheap gasoline do not do that. People with 401ks and the ability to take a nice 2-week long vacation every year, they can't do that. So as long as Americans, and our job is to organize Americans. We talk about how much we hate Americans, how much Americans are fat, how stupid Americans are. Okay, like, at the end of the day, we're all Americans. So it's our job to organize our people. We're not organizing Cubans. We're not organizing Palestinians in Palestine because we're not in Palestine. Who are we? We can't go over there and organize Palestinian people. Like, we're not in Sudan. We're not in the Congo. But it's our job to organize a party that can effectively help these people by grinding the gears of American imperialism to a halt. Such a party would have to involve themselves in elections at the local and even state level. Like many of these elections for school board are decided by a few dozen votes.
Yeah.
And an organization like DSA, with the resources that we have, like we can easily sway these races. And school boards have a lot of power. They have a lot of authority at the local level. Like they're able to decide the district's position on trans kids, having their full democratic rights. And that's something that, like Moms for Liberty, like the right is kicking our ass at this. Like they are literally working to get their people at local positions. And they're winning. Like a lot of these rural school boards, they're dominated by people like Moms for Liberty.
Yeah.
And the left needs to quit responding, reacting to shit. We need to start being proactive. We need to start influencing shit if we're going to get large chunks, large swaths of ordinary working class people on our side. They're not joining us now because we're not doing shit.
Yeah.
So yeah. In regards to a workers' party in the United States, that's something that we're simply going to have to do, even if we don't want to, because a party is what? Once you strip away all of the ideological gobbledygook, what you've got is an organization that has as its purpose the seizure of power, right? The seizure and exercise of power by any means necessary. The ability to define a phenomenon and make it act in the desired manner. Honestly, every leftist needs that phrase from Huey tattooed on their forehead, so it's the first thing they see when they get up in the morning and the last thing they see when they go to bed at night. Because that is such a sweet summation of what we're trying to do, of what power is. The left in the United States has no power. AOC in Congress, where she hems and haws and stutters her way through a genocide, that's not power. That's not power. That's being used. That's allowing yourself to be used by power, and it's using the left to keep yourself in power. AOC knows perfectly well what power is. She's a relatively powerful person. So the formation of a workers' party in the United States, I would say, requires like actually recruiting people from class struggle. The left does this stupid thing where it like recruits other leftists. Like, why would you do that? Why are you trying to poach other people out of the organizations that they're in so that they can? That's parasitism. That's what vampires do. Quit being vampires. Like, where's our fresh blood? Where is our fresh blood? Like, why are we not getting people from the UAW, from the various local level black organizations, Latino organizations, grassroots Palestinian organizers? We love their work. You want to parasitize off their work, but why are they not coming to us, seeking us out organically, and seeking like strategic cooperation and even joining us? It's like, what do we have to offer? Bodies to come march through the streets? We don't offer them anything. We don't have no power. And until we get power by involving ourselves deeply and thoroughly in class struggle, we're not going to have any.
But of course, to build the actual electoral fighting party that we would want to have a vanguard party in place, but we don't have that right now. So I wondered, like, obviously this is sort of purely hypothetical, but you know, is there any way that like the left factions, the left organizations that do have some staying power and that have been around for a while and do have numbers, if they're like a convention where you come together and try to create this workers' party? And I mean, I think there's so many contradictions and issues that would flow from that. But I just wonder if there's a possibility of creating a workers' party in the process of building a vanguard party that isn't quite there yet. Because I don't think we have a lot of time. I think the crisis in this country is here, and I think it's going to continue to deepen. And if we don't have some mechanism of power, even if it's not the full mechanism that we would want, I think we're absolutely going to get fucking crushed.
Yeah, like you said, the crisis is here. And crisis is a double-edged sword. Like, yeah, at one point, I mean, at one age, it makes people suffer. Suffering is bad. Nobody wants to suffer. That's why we're communists, because we don't want to suffer and we don't want our people to suffer. But on the other hand, like, it tempers people. It tempers people. Struggle, class struggle tempers people. Like, if it wasn't for the fact that the police were dogging out the black residents of Oakland, there would have been no Black Panther Party. If it hadn't been for the fact that the Tsar and the nascent Russian bourgeoisie was grinding the Russian people between two millstones, there would have never been a Bolshevik party. So no, I'm not saying that I want people to suffer. I don't want anybody to suffer. That's why I'm a communist. But at the same time, struggle and suffering lends itself to the creation of the formations that we need, because all of the bourgeois finery and bullshit is stripped away. And all that's left is, as Lenin would say, real communists, real Marxists. So in terms of a convention, if such a thing were called, I would definitely show up and be there with popcorn just to watch all of these idiots fight with each other and walk out in disgust, or try to poach each other's members, or do a bunch of other stupid things that the left loves doing. But a workers' party or a vanguard party is not going to come out of a convention. It's going to come out of class struggle. Absolutely. Alliances and real formations aren't going to be forged through conversations on Twitter. It's going to be forged through class struggle. It's going to be forged in the heat of the fight, just like all good things that have ever come through our movement, from our movement, rather.
Now, I wanted to bring up this part because you've talked about the need to, like, sort of, you say be normal, but, reach out to working class people. Why don't we have, UAW members interested in socialism and communism and, all these issues? And one strain that has emerged, which I'm sure you and I share an opinion on, a negative opinion on, is this sort of patriotic socialist, but then it turned into this MAGA communist strain, which our whole argument is that actually the Pat Sulks and the MAGA communists don't like each other. Yeah, they beef now?
Yeah, Caleb Maupin's people, I think, are the ones who call themselves patriotic socialists. Those are the CPI weirdos. Yep. And the MAGA communists are, that's Hazaldine and Hinkle and Yankee Tanky and all the rest of those weirdos.
Right.
How the fuck do you let that disgusting pedophile Vosh make a fool out of you? Yeah. Like, he's done it. I think he did it to Eddie Liger, and I think he did it to Yankee Tanky.
God damn.
How low an opinion of yourself. Like, have you ever wondered why Vosh never has black people on? Because he knows it will dog his fucking ass out. Mm-hmm. So he finds all of these degenerate, weird white kids like Eddie Liger and Yankee Tanky, and he brings them on and he humiliates them for his pedo fan base. Yeah, but yeah, those two sects, groups, whatever the fuck you want to call them, don't like each other.
Right, but so let's just say that the MAGA communist argument is that the left is too unnormal. They don't connect like average conservative working class people. So we're gonna try to.
Wait, so. Well, for one, you're making a mistake of assuming that MAGA communists are normal.
Absolutely, I agree.
No, you're not making a mistake. They're making a mistake. Yeah. Like, have you ever listened to Haas?
They're fucking insane. Yeah, they're the least normal motherfuckers I know.
A guy with the fucking fez waving a sword around and shouting "Kaboga, Kaboga!" Like, these people are a walking meme. Like, nobody takes them seriously, and it's a meme and it's a grift.
Yeah.
Like, how did Jackson Hinkle become the most canceled man on Twitter?
It's so crazy. I just laugh out loud.
Followers.
Yeah.
Like if you go in the comments of any of his tweets, and it's a bunch of bots. Like, he literally bought a bunch of bots to follow him. Mm-hmm. That's how he got 1.5 or 2 million or however many followers he has. They're not organic. They're not real. Just like the whole fucking movement. It's not organic. It's not real. It's LaRouche-eyed bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, essentially.
Absolutely, absolutely. But their whole argument is that they're trying to reach out to the average American worker. Of course, we know it's bullshit. Of course, they don't have any resonance with those actual workers. But in the process,
we got to talk about, like, what does the average American worker look like? The average American worker is not a conservative white man in Iowa.
Exactly.
The average American petty bourgeois is a conservative white man in Iowa. Mm-hmm. Your average American worker, your average American proletarian who does not have anything to lose but their chains is black or brown, is a woman most likely, mm-hmm. has children, is middle-aged, and is probably undocumented. That's your American proletarian. Mm. But here you have Jackson Hinkle talking about deporting American proletarians.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Absolute piece of shit. Yes.
It's a uniquely American brand of batshittery.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and move on then, because of course you and I agree on that 100%. Another important issue on the Marxist left is, and I know you've talked about this convincingly and I think really well, is the role that decolonization would have to play in a truly revolutionary movement here on Turtle Island. And I believe it would be essential to a thoroughgoing revolution that seeks to uproot the capitalist imperialist system. You can't just set aside the issue of colonization and think you're going to build an anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist system rooted in colonization. So do you agree with that basic point? And what is your vision of decolonization in general and for Black and Indigenous peoples in particular?
Yes, I do agree with that definition. And the process of decolonization, okay, it has to be led by Black and brown people, Black and Indigenous people, because like a lot of people seem to think that, oh, we're going to give you what's basically a CHAZ, a Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone for Black people in Atlanta. I'm like, we didn't ask for that. We asked for, well, there's various strains of Black nationalism.
Sure.
And you talk about New Africa, like there's a handful of states, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, and South Carolina, I think it's the map. Personally, I would expand that all the way up to D.C. and Chicago, but I'm greedy. So those were the lands where our ancestors were enslaved, like where we came into Genesis as a people. They took several African nations, Igbo, Ewe, Mandinka, Yoruba, all these different groups, dozens, and on these slave ships and on these plantations forced us into new being. We were simply Black, but we reclaimed that term, and now we are New African because we are Africans, but we're a new ethnic group. We're a new people in the United States. Of course, I'm still not saying, like, if I walk up to my boomer Black coworker tonight and be like, hey, what's up, fellow New African? Be like, what the fuck is a New African? So there's still a lot of ideological and political work that needs to be done around the term and around that struggle, but I fuck with it. And of course, our Indigenous comrades, like, they have various opinions on treaty rights, on reparations, on the land, and a variety of other things. So the main thing is that we are not going to allow white people, communist or otherwise, to decide what we get. We decide what we get. And we're also going to decide, like, what's going to happen with settlers in the United States. Are you all going to be deported to Europe or slaughtered in mass or all of these other horrible scenarios? No. Well, like, because Black people and Indigenous people, by and large, are not butchers. We're not going to do to y'all what y'all did to us, because we're better people than that. We learned from the horrible things that y'all did to us, actually. But, like, and then, like, we also have to consider, like, after a revolution, like, you're going to have a substantial chunk of white people who are going to fight that, and are probably going to end up dead because they fought it. Mm-hmm. So you all's population numbers are probably going to go like, but at the same time, you all are still going to exist because a lot of you all are going to be our comrades, and we do not abuse or kick our comrades out of the country and do other horrible things to our comrades. So, and another thing, like, no Indigenous person, no Black person is saying that we need to go back to 1491 or we need to go back to We need to go back to the situation before slavery because most of us are dialectical and historical materialists, and we realize that history marches forward, not backwards. Mm-hmm. So I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what the process of decolonization is going to look like exactly. Anybody that tells you that they do is a charlatan. Mm-hmm. But I could definitely say that it's going to involve, it's going to be heavily centered around the around repairing the massive environmental damage that colonization has done to these continents, not just North America, but South America. Like the Amazon is literally being gutted. The left lung of the earth is being gutted. It's like in 500 to 1,000 years, what was once the Amazon very well possibly might be a savanna or even a desert if we don't win. I don't want to visit. I don't want my descendants looking at the Amazon desert. I don't want the last human beings, again, if we don't win, gazing out upon the last tree in the Amazon desert. That is an intolerable future for me. And that's why decolonization is so necessary, because with decolonization comes the end of capitalism. It comes the end of imperialism. Capitalism and imperialism are literally destroying the planet and destroying our species. That's why decolonization is necessary. It's not a revenge fantasy. It's not a we want to get rid of all the white people and revenge fantasy. Yes, it's cathartic to talk like that sometimes, but it's politically unserious. Like we're not going to be able to send all the white people back to Europe in leaky boats. That's not, for one, that's inhumane, that's barbaric, that's cruel. And then for two, it simply can't be done logistically. What European country wants a bunch of Americans coming to their shores? Nobody. Shit, the Irish would literally build a wall around their island. So yeah, that's my take on decolonization.
Can you critique the idea that some chauvinists hold that you could have a full socialist revolution without decolonization? Like, what would that lead to? That attempt to do that?
It's basically going to be fascism with the red flag. Mm-hmm. Like I thought we're fighting the revolution to get black people and indigenous people out of the shackles that we've been forced into. So you're going to have a white-led revolution, and then you're going to continue to give us scraps. Sounds like black people and indigenous people are going to have to make another revolution after that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you're going to have a settler socialist regime. You're basically going to have early Israel.
Labor Zionism, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree. Okay, let's move on to another big issue in the world, which is China and Taiwan. Now, I know you're a Maoist, and Maoists have obviously very clear position on China as having taken the capitalist road under Deng during the reform period and still to this day. But of course, U.S. imperialism is, obviously hostile and increasingly so towards China. So with that in mind, what posture should Maoists take in the context of a possible conflict between China and the U.S. over Taiwan, given both their feelings about China as well as their anti-imperialism and understanding of the world system and U.S. hegemony?
Honestly, as an American, what I think of China doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. If there's to be another revolution in China, if capitalism is going to be overthrown in China, it's not going to be overthrown by American Maoists hurling insults at it on the internet. It's going to be overthrown by the Chinese people who organize themselves and get rid of the bastards who have arrogated unto themselves their party. So our job, if the United States were to get into an armed struggle or any other type of struggle with China over Taiwan, would be to raise the slogan, U.S. out of the East, U.S. out of the Pacific, because that's what we have influence. That's what we can have control over. It's our tax dollars that are funding the aircraft carriers. Like we've ringed China with aircraft carriers. We've engaged in all sorts of provocative activities. Yes, China is an imperialist state. Yes, Russia is an imperialist state. But at the same time, our country is the beast. China and Russia are like little wolves running around nipping at the carrion. So our job as Maoists, as communists, as leftists, as whatever in the belly of the beast is, yes, to demonstrate solidarity with our Chinese comrades when they rise, and they're going to rise against their own capitalist imperialist class. But the key focus, the main blow, should be at the United States. Maoists made this mistake in the 70s. They were talking about main blow at the Soviet Union. Okay, well, what the fuck are you going to do to the Soviet Union? They've got nukes, for fuck's sake. You're not going to do anything. You're just running your mouth. So we cannot make this mistake again. Like, that's why Maoists are a joke in large portions of the world, because of positions like that. Like, we basically ended up backing the United States in Angola because Cuba was seen as being a Soviet revisionist puppet. Like, get fucking real. What is good for the Angolan people? What is good for the people in the various countries that our country is riding roughshod over? What is good for the people of Haiti? If Haiti wants to engage with the Chinese, if Jamaica, if Cuba, all these different countries want to engage with the Chinese, these are sovereign fucking countries. That's their business. Our goal, our job, is to end American imperialism. And until we do that, like, all of our critiques or whatever are going to fall hollow. Because, okay, yeah, China is doing this. China owns the coltan mines in the Congo. But look at what your country is doing. What are you doing about Africa? What are we doing about Africa? So that's something that we have to keep in mind, and when we talk about international affairs.
All right, so I have a handful of questions here. We're going to maybe kind of do a slight lightning round. I'll ask these questions with quick repetition back to back. You don't have to, answer these incredibly briefly. You can take as long as you want, but just a bunch of questions I have at the end here. So what do you think will happen this election, and what does this election say about the state of this society and the contradictions and crises that throttle it?
Trump is going to win, obviously. Like, he's kicking Biden's ass in all the polls. I think I've seen one where his lead is narrowing, but yeah, Trump is going to steamroll Biden. Why? Because Biden is not, he's an empty suit.
Yeah.
He's an empty suit. He's let Israel make him a punk. He doesn't respond to the will of his own base. He hasn't done shit for black people. He hasn't done shit for indigenous people. He continues to sell weapons to Israel while simultaneously sending 1,000 U.S. troops to build a port in Gaza. Trump is going to win, and it's all the Democrats' fault because they take their base for granted, and they treat their base like spoiled children who don't know how to do politics. And you can't do that when your base is fragile enough as it is. Like, a lot of not all, but a substantial chunk of young black Gen Z lumpen proletariat people, like, they love Trump. They love Trump. It's the churchgoers. It's the old union heads. Those are the people that are down for Biden. But a lot of these young kids out on the streets, they love Trump. Like, who the fuck is going to get excited about Joe fucking Biden or Kamala Harris? So it just shows like the ruling class is the ruling class, okay? Like the OG ruling class, the white shoe Wall Street money people. Like, they alternate between playing with Trump and like despising Trump because he has a big mouth. He's unpredictable. And he has a base that is literally willing to kill for him. Like, people have literally killed for Trump. Mm-hmm. He's a political wild card. And the ruling class, well, I say the conservative because Trump is part of the ruling class.
Right.
But like the old school conservative Washington, New York City, Philly establishment, like they don't like people like that. They like their fascism quiet. They like people that they can mold like putty. They like people that they can manipulate. And Trump can be manipulated, definitely. Like everybody from Xi Jinping to Kim Jong-un lied to him. Yeah. But he could definitely be manipulated by people who appeal to his ego.
Yeah.
But like the old money families, the Brahmins, and these international corporations, they prefer an idiot like Joe Biden. So that just shows that like the ruling class, it fights amongst itself.
Oh yeah.
And we have to be able to take advantage of these fights. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that they're enemies forever, because at the end of the day, money is going to back money. Mm-hmm. That's why I laugh like when people are like, why would this rapper endorse Trump? Because of money. because of money. This guy is closer to Trump than he is to you. What exactly do you have in common with the guy that's worth $150 million?
Mm-hmm. One thing I think about quite often is that if Trump had won that second election and was in office right now and the Israel-Palestine thing went down, do you agree that millions of liberals who are now providing cover for Biden and the administration would have taken a different tact on the Palestine question if it was Trump in charge, sort of showing their immaturity and their partisan hackery? But at the same time, there is that benefit when Trump gets into office that the liberals out on brunch tend to join the quote-unquote resistance or protest movements or whatever they may be.
Thing is that, yeah, they're warm bodies, but I don't like liberals around the so-called resistance because they fuck it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, they fuck it up. They bring they never learn. They're not going to become, well, a few of them, a precious few of them might become communists, but most of them, they shit all over the place. They use their money and their prestige and their influence. Like, remember the fucking pussy hat parades?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they use their fucking influence and their power and their connections to sideline leftists. Then they get some other hack elected. It's probably going to be Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm.
They get some other hack elected. Then they disappear and they use state power against the left for 4 or 8 years, however long this lackey is in office. And then the dance repeats. I'm tired of this fucking movie. I want to see something else.
Absolutely. All right. Well, where do you see the most hope in the world right now? And how does one stay optimistic and committed given the incredibly bleak state of affairs at the moment?
Palestine. Like, the Palestinian people have shown us how to fight. I could just put it that way. The Palestinian people have shown us how to fight. All of these factions have come together and they said, you know what? Fuck it. Fuck it. The October 7th concentration camp break was it's going to go down in history as one of the most glorious events of the 21st century. I don't care who gets mad at me. I don't care who calls me what. Mm-hmm. I will never forget where I was on that night. It was nighttime over here. It was daytime over there. I will never forget where I was. And future guerrilla fighters and people's warriors are going to look. They're looking at this footage that we're seeing now. They're going to be looking at it, rather. And they're going to be taking notes, and they're going to be learning from it. The Palestinian people have literally grabbed us and shaken us by our shoulders and be like, get off your fucking ass and wage some struggle. So Palestine gives me hope. Yemen gives me hope. This small, poor country that nobody even knew existed. Well, I knew it existed, but I'm a geography nerd. I literally memorized an atlas when I was 10.
Nice.
But Yemen gives me hope. This small, little, poor country has brought the world to its knees. And regardless of, note that I said Yemen and not the Houthis.
Yeah.
Because for one, that's not even what they call themselves. They call Ansar Allah. Mm-hmm. But so Ansar Allah represents the will of the Yemeni people, just like Hamas and the PFLP and all the other armed factions. They represent the will of the Palestinian people. Mm-hmm. Regardless of what Western leftists and liberals think and say, nobody gives a fuck about what's being written in Jacobin. Like, there's a war going on. And it's in my interest as a black man, as a communist, for Palestine to win that war. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm a Maoist, so I have to give a shout out to the comrades in the CPI, Maoist, the Communist Party of the Philippines, mm-hmm. and everywhere else that the spirit of Mao Zedong burns bright and the people wage struggle.
Amen. If you had to guess, where will humanity be in 100 years and in 500 years?
100 years? We're probably there's definitely going to be, I'm not one of those doomers that's like, oh, humans are going to all be dead in 100 years.
Right.
Like, climate change will have definitely gotten worse. Like, I'm pretty sure that the Maldives will have sunk under the sea by that point. And New Orleans is going to be threatened, Miami, all of these major coastal cities. Like, you're going to have a major rush of people into the Midwest and Great Lakes region and shit, even Canada, because what like the South feels like now, those areas are going to feel like that. So, like, if I were you, I would buy your vacation property in St. Louis now. Because we finna be the beach. But yeah, climate change is going to continue to fuck the world up. And as we know, it's going to fuck the third world up long before it fucks us up. So the Maldives, Bangladesh, Lagos, Nigeria, all of these third world cities that are built on coasts, Rio, the ice is going to continue to melt in the poles, and the sea levels are going to continue to rise. So a lot of these people are going to end up being climate refugees. Bangladesh might not even exist as a country on land. We might be talking about the Bangladeshi Isles or something. And that's sad. Like, entire cultures of people will be uprooted and displaced. 100 years from now, we will be talking about a free Palestine, though. That I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Like, Israel is not going to see the end of this century. I'm pretty sure that the EU will have either fallen apart or transitioned into some unrecognizable state. Well, why are we even guessing? Like, health is becoming like so advanced, and technology is becoming so advanced. You and me might be having this conversation in 2124 for all we know.
Yeah. Yeah. I do have some hope in that. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. In regards to the United States, will it still be a solid territorial entity? It depends on what happens. There's so many factors that influence that. I'm not going to even try to speculate. I do think that Puerto Rico will have finally won its independence, though. Because of all the colonies, that's the one I think with the strongest movement. And honestly, I think that America sees Puerto Rico a lot of Americans that are surprised when they find out that Puerto Rico isn't a state. Mm-hmm. They already think that it's a country.
Yeah,
they already think that. They don't call Puerto Ricans Americans; they call them Puerto Ricans. Mm-hmm. You meet a dude oh yeah, I'm half Puerto Rican, I'm half American. So that national culture is still there. Same thing with Hawaii. You meet a guy, I'm half Hawaiian and I'm half black or whatever. So the national consciousness is still there. Yeah. And I think if they handle their struggle correctly and they exercise power, both of those places will have definitely won their independence. All of these little bullshit sovereignty movements like Cascadia and shit that's not going to happen. The Cascadians, last I checked, were pacifists. The South, I think, might continue to act the fool. But will we end up in a new civil war by 2124? It's hard to tell. There's certainly enough hopped up, angry, violent people on the right side to make that a reality. So I guess that's just even more reason for the left to get our shit together.
And I would also say that humanity and certainly the American state has never gone 100 years without a major either civil war, revolutionary war, or world war. So I feel like that's almost baked in at this point.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll look good in blue. I don't know about you.
All right, what about 500 years? I know it's way out there. And you don't have to give specifics, but the world, do you think communism is becoming a globalized system at that point? You think we're still in the socialist transition?
Well, Mao said that communism will last for thousands of years. I don't think he gave a time frame for socialism, but I definitely think that socialism will last quite a while, mm-hmm. especially if we're talking about on a global scale.
Yeah.
We have some places that are still in feudalism. Mm-hmm. We still have some semi-feudal places that haven't even reached what we would call nation capitalism yet. So a lot of the world is underdeveloped. Africa in particular is underdeveloped. There's literally Walter Rodney literally wrote a whole book on that. And there's a lot of shit that we would have to solve before we can talk about the process of establishing a worldwide classless, stateless, moneyless society. I definitely think that we will see, we will be in a socialist stage during this period that you're talking about. Shit. Where were we 500 years ago? Let me see. You had the Spaniards that were hacking and slicing their way across North America. When was 500 years ago? Was that 1524?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Would you want to go back to 1524? Well, you'd probably be dead from the pox, so I don't think so.
Yeah. But that just shows the enormity of change that happens in 500 years.
Yeah. Like if you could, well, the diseases we have nowadays, if either of us went back to 1524, we would probably trigger like a global pandemic just because of all the fucking germs we've got in our bodies. I think they love the AR-15 though.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd give
I'd go with like 500 ARs that I get through methods, and I would go and I would give them to the indigenous people.
Hell yeah.
All around the world. And show them how to use. As a matter of fact, I'd learn how to make one of those motherfuckers, and I would bring the requisite apparatus, and I would literally give them the power to make AR-15s. And then I'd hop forward in time, and I'd see where we were.
That'd be fascinating.
I'd love to land in the fucking Osage People's Republic.
That'd be fucking awesome. Yeah, like literally go and equip them so that the colonization stops 500 years ago and doesn't go any further. And then what that would say about the development of capitalism and imperialism over the coming centuries, it could completely undermine it.
Yeah, maybe I should write a book like that.
That'd be dope. I'd read it. All right, last question for you, my friend, and I really appreciate you taking your time with us today. This has been really fun, and I always enjoy hearing your thoughts on a wide range of topics. Last question is what advice would you give to young people coming of age and developing a political consciousness today?
Study. Don't listen exclusively to assholes like me and Brent or any of these other content creators. I mean, yeah, listen to us. But like at the end of the day, you're going to be getting our biases. So I always encourage people, like any good teacher, to go and study the source for yourself. You want to know what Lenin thought about something? Read your Lenin. You want to know what Mao or Huey or any of these other theoreticians thought? Read them yourself. Because, yeah, I will tell you what I think about what Lenin said, or I will give you my interpretation of what Lenin said. But ultimately, it's up to you to parse this stuff through your experience as a worker, as a youth, as a young person coming up in the United States during late-stage capitalism and imperialism. And hopefully, you'll come to the correct conclusions, because that's really what matters. Coming to the correct conclusions and being ready and knowing what needs to be done, when it needs to be done. That's more important than mastering Mao or being able to quote or recite him. We're not in Bible study here. We're in the school of class struggle. We're trying to unmake and remake the world. So that's my advice. Study and get your friends to study and get involved in class struggle. And for fuck's sake, before you join any organization, read its program, read its constitution if it has one. And honestly, I would say talk to people who've left. Yeah, you might get some bitterness, you might get some bias, but talk to people who have left the organization. Like, what was their experience? What was their experience within the organization? Were they abused? How were abuse cases handled? Because that shit is rampant on the left. How are people treated? What is political education like? Like, it's like you need to ask questions before you go to work on a new job. You have to know what you're getting yourself into, because ideally, you are going to stay in this organization for a while. Leaving organizations is traumatic because a lot of these kids that are joining these orgs, they don't have that many friends, or they recruit their friends into this. But most of these people, they make their friends in the org. So when you get kicked out of the org, or when you resign from the org, you lose a lot of your friends. And that's traumatic. That's stressful. And that helps trigger mental illnesses. So you have to take care of yourself. And I'm not saying don't join an org. I'm saying do your research. Do your research. Ask questions. If they get mad at you for asking questions, that's an organization that you don't have any business being in. If they hem and haw, or if they're sneaky with it, or if they're trying to evade questions, that's an organization that you don't have any business being in, because they're already on some fuck shit and you haven't even joined yet. And especially if these orgs charge dues, you're paying money to these people. You have the right to know.
Absolutely. Well said. All right, my friend, thank you so much for coming on. Before I let you go, can you please let listeners know where they can find you and your work online?
I'm on YouTube. I'm still Black Red Guard there. I'm on Twitch at OG Black Red Guard. And I'm on Medium at Black Like Mao. And I'm on Twitter at Black Red Guard 1.
Cool. I will provide those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.